So in this video, we're going to be talking about how to find the volume of a rectangular prism. There are other kinds of prisms, but this year in 6th grade, we're just focusing on a rectangular prism. You see rectangular prisms all the time in your everyday life because anything that's a box is a rectangular prism. So a rectangular prism is just something that has a base that's a rectangle. So the part that it's sitting on is a rectangle, but it's a 3D figure. So all the other things, the things we've been finding area of, have been two-dimensional figures, meaning they're flat. But this is 3D, and so instead of finding area, we're finding the volume, which means if I'm talking about, let's say, a box of cereal, how much could I fit in that box of cereal? So we're talking about the space inside of the box. And so we're going to label some things on this prism. So if you think about the base of it, the part that's sitting on the ground, so this blue part here, okay, that right there is a rectangle, which is why this is called a rectangular prism. And if you think back to our original definition of the formula of area, we did length times width. So let's call this down here the length, and this over here is going to be the width. But since this is not just a rectangle, it's actually going up from the bottom, we also have to label the height. How far up does it go? And so if you were to look at your star chart, it would give you a formula for volume that looks like this. Volume equals big B times H. A lot of people think that that's just base times height. Well, base times height gives us area, so that's not going to give us the volume. The area formula has a lowercase b. This one has an uppercase B. We call it big B. So big B means area of the base. So in this case, the base is a rectangle, and to find the area of a rectangle, you can just do the length times the width. But then the H is the height. So you would do the length times the width, whatever you got, you would multiply it times the height. So I prefer to write it like this: length times width times height. It means the same thing, because again, this right here is length times width, and then you multiply it times the height. So I just do length times width times height. Let's look at an example of how this would work. So here we have a rectangular prism, just looks like some sort of box, and we want to find the volume. Just like with area, I always want you to start with your formula. And here I'm using dots to show multiplication. Up here I didn't. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you know you're multiplying. Then you can just plug in your numbers. And it honestly, it doesn't matter which one you call the length, which one you call the width, and which one you call the height. Because I could turn this box upside down, I could turn it on its side. When you multiply in any order and you come out with the same answer. So I'm going to say 18 is the length, and 3 is the width, and 5 is the height. But again, doesn't matter which order you go in. Then I just have to solve. It also does not matter which order you solve in, because remember that with multiplication, you can switch around the order. So I could do 18 times 3 and then multiply that by 5, but I would have to work both of those problems out. And because I know what 3 times 5 is, I like to just do the ones I know first. So the 18 is going to stay for now, because I'm going to go ahead and say 3 times 5 is 15. And then I just have to work out one problem, because I don't know 18 times 15. So 18 times 15 is 49, placeholder 0, and then an 8 and 1. So I ended up getting 270. It was centimeters. Remember that area is in square units, but volume is in cubic units. And so this is cubic centimeters, and so it's to the power of 3 instead of the power of 2. And that's because, again, this is a 3-dimensional object, not a 2-dimensional object. And one more time, if you were to do 18 times 3 and then whatever you got, multiply it times 5, you're going to get the same thing. I was just trying to work smarter, not harder. So just multiply your length times your width times your height to find volume.